Welcome to Collegial Conversations with Diana Clark, the professional webinar series that offers clinical and personal perspectives on issues that are common, but often not talked about. Here is today's Collegial Conversation.
Thank you for joining a Collegial Conversation with Diana Clark. Today, joining us is a very special guest, Margaret Stone, who is our very own Director of Employer Services at O'Connor Professional Group. In her role as Head of Employer Services, Margaret works closely with OPG's corporate clients to provide holistic and real-time mental health and wellness solutions that foster workforce resilience. For more than 25 years, Margaret has provided executive search, coaching, performance leadership, and development services to professionals at every level and phase of their careers for individuals of high net worth backgrounds. Thank you so much for joining us today, Margaret. I will now turn the conversation over to Diana.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for joining, Margaret.
Thank you for having me. I've been waiting for this.
You have?
I have. I've been waiting for my invite.
All right. So let's talk about employers. The workforce has changed. The line has blurred between home and work, and the conversation about work-life balance and boundaries seems never ending. Now we're adding the conversation about burnout. Mm-hmm. So let's reel it back a little bit and talk about your motivation and experience in starting up services for employers to provide mental wellness services for their employees. Let's talk.
Great question, because it's been very fun in the last, let's say, 2 years. I joined the firm in March of 2020, but I'd spent my career working with high performing individuals and companies and Wall Street firms. And when things started to go off track, it became clear that the people who really are everybody's company were struggling. And it was the first time that we really stepped back as companies and employers and said, wow, we have to support people. And to me, that was this tremendous opportunity to go to our corporate clients and say, let's try something that you've not done before, but probably will have incredible benefits to your production, retention, and engagement. And that's one-to-one coaching. And there's no app involved, right? So we get our coaches who are clinically informed, clinically trained together with employees who can unload and unpack what's going on. And in the last 2 years, it's not as if we haven't had stuff before March of 2020. But what has happened is people are incredibly grateful, which I love seeing the feedback of, this is so great. I have an opportunity to talk about these things that normally you had to leave at the door and maybe shove down and deal with afterwards. And so this program has just grown organically based on what people need. So coaching, informational webinars, one-to-one conversations with our coaches, kind of ask the coach a question and get a confidential space to discuss that. And I would say overall, the confidentiality is what makes this special too, because it's outside of the firm, it's independent. We do not share confidential information. The only time we would have to share something is if someone expressed a desire to do harm, which thankfully has never happened. But it's really this great opportunity to help people be better and feel better and actually feel really good about the fact that they asked for help.
Yeah, no, that's a great introduction to mental health services, right? The bridge between I might need some help emotionally and picking up the phone to an outside provider that you've never seen, or bridging that awkward communication to somebody you know saying, I know you have a therapist, who is that? Right. Those are awkward conversations. To have employers now offer services that provide that very bridge is inspiring. So it is taking into account that which we never used to.
Right. And you had mentioned very brilliantly, I might add, a few weeks ago, that it is all about connection, right? It is this connection, whether we're in this box doing what we're doing now, or we're having safe space with someone on the phone. It's a connection to a person who is your person, who's there for you, who validates how you feel, who can normalize how you feel so that you're not thinking, I'm the only one who's feeling anxious. I'm the only one struggling with work-life balance. And there is real psychological, emotional comfort in connecting with someone directly who genuinely cares and can help.
In and of itself, my understanding of how that works is when two people connect, you and I are connecting, I have to use my fingers here, in truth, in vulnerability, what happens is that amygdala, that flight, fight, freeze center calms down. Both people calm down, both the listener and the speaker. And that in and of itself seems miraculous to me, that we are not using enough in our lives, in our companies, in our families. The idea that connection needs to precede rational thought.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my experience, oftentimes as an account manager, I will talk to the employee first before connecting them. And there is often this apologetic, heightened sense of reluctance to talk and maybe a little bit of embarrassment. And then when they connect and they realize they're connecting with someone who's like, I'm here to help, there's no judgment, it just comes down. And there's this gratitude that comes up about how lucky am I to be able to have this platform. It's not going to be perfect for anyone, but what it does is it takes down, as you said, it takes down that anxiety dramatically. Once you talk to someone and you realize they're listening, they care, they're not judging, and they want to support you. That's, I think, a miraculous thing that we didn't do a great job of before. It was kind of like, oh, you're having a tough day? Okay, fine. Somebody died in your family? Oh, I'm sorry, deal with it. Now we actually are giving people permission to say, I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time. I need to talk to somebody. Yeah. And that's what I think is just so amazing about this program. And the results we've seen are people come back to us repeatedly and say, this is fantastic. Can we keep doing this? This has given me perspective on how to handle my kids at home, my husband, my partner, my coworkers.
That's great.
Yeah.
Do you see the company culture changing as a result? So we know that individuals are shifting because we're hearing it one-on-one. Are you hearing that company cultures are responding differently than they used to as well, with a more emotionally in tune workforce?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Initially when companies reached out, I don't think they knew how it would work. And we never do, right? Who's actually going to come to the table? And you think, the senior people will never come. Well, in some firms, in law firms that we work with, the senior people are coming to the table and talking. The companies have really stepped up, and I have to take my hat off to the HR leaders, because they are the ones who've been left in charge of trying to figure all of this out. It's like suddenly they've become the mothership. Everything resides in human resources. How do we take care of our employees in a way that we haven't done before? So it's making things accessible. Words like flexibility, hybrid work environments, leaving space if people have to go and take care of an elderly parent or their children because the healthcare or the childcare system has changed because of everything with the pandemic. It's being more in tune with how are our workers feeling? Why is productivity shut down over here? Why is it higher here? And companies have stepped up. They are being curious, really curious about what can we do next. And if they're being curious, then that means they're listening and they like the responses they're getting from their employees. Like I totally tip my hat to the HR leaders who want the best for their employees.
What are some of the hurdles you're finding? What are some of the, are there any hurdles? I should start with that. I imagine there are, but what are the hurdles?
The hurdles come up. It's interesting. I think the hurdles are initially getting people to believe that this actually has value. And so there's this leap of faith, right? When you go to a traditional benefits offering, there's like, here's an app, here's a program, here's this, here's that. It's very kind of concrete. The success of this depends on participation. So I always encourage, and it really rests with the company, to promote this, to give people permission to do this. And that can be a little bit of a stickiness there, where companies like, well, we're offering it, they should come. No, employees, none of us, I'm terrible at it, of giving ourselves the space to say, you know what, I think I should maybe take advantage of that and go and talk to someone. Because that's not, depending on the culture you work in, whether it's financial services or law or big corporate settings, it's not the norm to do that. So to step away for 30 minutes and take care of yourself, it's teaching people how to reframe how they look at it. And I think that's been a challenge, to get companies to realize this needs to be a part of your daily diet of, employee benefits, a check-in. It doesn't have to be a crisis. It doesn't have to be a problem. It can merely be, I wanted to check in and tell you that things are going really well, and the advice you gave me has been impactful, and I want to learn how to do X. And it makes them better leaders, better people, what have you. The other challenge that comes in is getting sometimes different groups to be vulnerable, right? And I think oftentimes the senior leadership doesn't feel like that's something they need to do. And I always encourage our clients, just one session, just one, just so you have a feel for what the rest of the firm is doing, so that it can trickle down.
Great idea. Great idea. So this is a beginning. What else do you think employers need to be doing to shift culture? You have a window of many years and many jobs supporting many kinds of employers. What's next?
Great question. I think what's next is taking a whole company approach. Everybody, we look at how do we take care of our people, and we put everybody in boxes. And I think that from a mental health and wellness standpoint, it has to be top to bottom, very top to bottom. What does the company need to sustain its culture? If it's a culture of inclusivity, how do we do that from top to bottom? How do we bring people together in real time on a consistent basis where they feel safe and they can express what they need? Because there's so many moving parts right now with pandemic. We have the changing needs in diversity, equity, and inclusion groups, and how to incorporate new ways of working and thinking and communicating, and having leadership workshops to just kind of fine tune and do just a tune up on, are we communicating with the next generation that's coming in? It's an organic process, right? It can't be, we're going to take care of these people right now. The newer members of the working force coming in definitely need skill building in how to advocate for themselves. The mid-level is beginning to see how leadership and skills, being a leader, are impactful. The leaders who are running the company need to know how to encourage. And it's all about how we treat one another. So that mental health is whole, I see it as whole health, not as just a fix it thing.
Yeah, that's great. Whole health. You mean not just above the neck or below it?
Top to bottom.
Top to bottom.
And that's what companies talk about now. It is whole health. Like they finally are bringing, there's parity, right? That actually people do suffer from things from the neck up, not just brain tumors, but neuropsychological, emotional, compulsive disorders. We don't talk about, one of the things that we're really fantastic at, because it is our company's background, is we know how to help people who may have a substance use issue or compulsive disorder, or may have, any kind of anxiety. Yeah. And so, that's not something that companies traditionally have broached. And now we're beginning to encourage them. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a coach's corner on, how do you deal with somebody who you think may have a substance use issue? What do you do if you have a spouse who has substance use issues? There are resources, NAAA, the benefits programs, but these are the conversations that need to be up front and center for companies, because they exist and they're real and we can't ignore them.
Right. And a spouse having a substance use disorder, a child having a substance use disorder, a parent having a substance use disorder is almost as impactful, if not more, than the individual who actually,
Oh, yeah.
who
Oh,
might
absolutely. Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
think
Because
that just numerically, they think that for every one person who struggles with a substance use disorder, which is somewhere around 10 to 15% of our country, there are 4 other people who are struggling significantly with that person's disorder.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. No doubt whatsoever. And I think that brings an interesting point about employer services. One of the things that we do for our clients each week is we give them a utilization report that shows in the aggregate, what are the themes that are coming up with your workforce? So nothing identifiable. And throughout the last year, the number one theme was anxiety, which in the first half of the year came from a lack of self-confidence and isolation and burnout. In the second half, it was continued burnout and this kind of back and forth with the variant, but it's the family coping skills and the family issues that have become so much more prevalent. And because of that, we launched a youth and young adult coaching program that incorporates the wisdom of our family coaching, thanks to you, and getting parents involved to be able to help manage the conversation with their younger kids, the sub 18 crowd, and an opportunity for 18 and older to be able to talk about the issues that I think their parents are seeing, which is failure to launch, depression, anxiety, feeling isolated. And this has become a very big part of employer services because it's not just the person at work, it's the family around it. And how do we support the whole family so that the employee remains productive and engaged?
I love it. Thank you, Margaret Stone, for joining us today on Collegial Conversations. That is a lovely place to end.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I'm glad you invited me.
Thank you for joining this webinar. Tune in to more webinars and sign up for our newsletter at o'connorpg.com.